All right, I started recording. So hey Eric, how's your day? How's it going?
So far it's been an absolutely fantastic day.
Really? How's life in
Yeah,
Chicago?
the life in Chicago is actually pretty good. I just got a piano, and I just got Tony a piano too.
Decent, decent. For what?
Yeah.
You just got him one just to
Dude,
cooperate, I guess?
he kind of got into some debt, and he had to return his piano because he couldn't
Okay.
afford it, right? And he like really liked playing that piano, so I thought it was
Okay.
just be a nice gift to get him a new one.
That's good. I mean, that's
Then
nice of you to do.
then I was in the store, and then I was like, you know what? I'll grab one too. So I went up to the counter. I was just like, yo, man, I'll grab two pianos. He's like, what do you want with two pianos?
You said one's not enough.
Yeah. When
Um,
you gym as hard as I do, yeah.
right, right, right. So basically, the reason I have you here is to talk about socialization in terms of online presence and how that affects political opinion more so in our generation. So um, I'd like to start off with a question really quick for you. How long do you spend on social media?
Um, on social media itself, I pretty much have very little presence. I'm in charge of Students for a Sensible Drug Policy social media accounts, so their Instagram and Facebook. But as for personal usage, very little. But for moderating the other Instagram accounts, I spend probably like an hour, 2 hours a week.
Okay, so what in terms of moderating, like what do you do? Like what's your job there? Like,
So mine is putting out flyers, pamphlets, associating with different organizations, seeing what different collaboration efforts could possibly be. We just got an invitation from the stand-up comedy group at DePaul, and they
interesting.
offered, yeah, right? Isn't that
Yeah.
weird? And they offered to do a Students for a Sensible Drug Policy night at like McGee's. So it's just like they want people to come to their events. So they'll do like free drinks and stuff,
Okay.
and they'll sign out to other orgs. And but that's just kind of like a booster thing, what we do within the community. So it's just like there's a lot of like either if you're against the war on drugs, you're probably against for-profit prisons, you're probably like for Democrat people. So there's a lot of sister orgs that work very closely in the community,
Okay.
and social media is a way to keep a tight connection.
Okay. So do you think through managing these types of or the platforms that you do for SSDP, do you think there's a lot of sharing of information that goes on so far as policy and stuff like that?
Yes, I would say that's
The main goal.
the
Okay.
primary objective. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess I kind of we could just move right along to the next because it kind of bleeds into the next question. What outlets do you get your news from primarily?
Primarily, NPR is the biggest one for me. I used to get it from the New York Times and Wall Street Journal and NPR, so collectively, all three of them. But since I was taking in like 4 hours of news a day, it was ridiculous. I was reading, especially during like quarantine and the pandemic in general, I was reading so
Yeah.
much news that it was like burning me out. So I kind of just considered NPR to be one, the most locally based in Chicago,
Mhm.
and then two, the since it's publicly funded instead of privately funded, it has different, interests as an organization. So I considered it the least
Yeah.
biased. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're already like an interesting subject to talk to. Well, I call you subject, but I mean we've been friends for a while. Because I was doing the more I was like doing research on this, like the further away you stray from like the commonality like of everybody else. Like already that there was a Pew Research study done in 2018 where it said that 68% of Americans got their news from social media. So already you're you're out of like you're out of the blue. Like how do you feel being a person in our generation that doesn't necessarily get their news from social media or just headlines like that? Do you feel like you're more knowledgeable or less compared to like you're part of an organization, right? And that has some political roots within it. It's mostly political actually. So do you feel like
Yeah.
compared to your peers, you're more intelligent or less intelligent when it comes to or knowledgeable? I guess not intelligent, knowledgeable. I think is the better term.
Yeah, I like the term knowledgeable. I think the biggest disparity I would think is that since I'm reading a lot of things it's in like literature format, which
Mm.
completely changes how you interpret news. So if you're getting your news off social media, it also has an infographic or maybe a video or something like that. So I think generally how I respond to news is a lot less emotional,
Okay.
because it's like once it's written word, how you take it in is at your own pace with a lot less tone attached to it. But you hear kids listening to, Fox News, and they're as amped up as, Tucker Carlson or
Mhm.
those other people. It's like they're
On
feeding
Hannity
off
and people
that
like
energy.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I think generally I have a more informed, or like statistically, like off of like the actual numbers, and a less emotional approach to a lot of politics.
Okay. All right, that's fair. I mean, yeah, even in some of the classes that I take here, I can see where a lot of the emotion from getting your news source comes from. Social media does a good job of amplifying little issues, not
Yeah,
necessarily little issues, but amping up more so the little things about big issues that
yeah.
that are good talking points. And I think that's what a lot of people like bank on when it
That's
comes to political discourse.
Yeah, that's a big thing, because it's like you are trying to. And it seems like the bipartisan divide, right, or the partisan divide, and there's like a broader effort to tie in every little thing
Hmm.
into something huge, right?
Right.
So it's like something as little as like they're passing a gun bill that's like restricting fully automatic, rifles, right? So it's just like, to a lot of Republicans, that's part of a master plan on the Democrat side, or like changing Georgia voting laws. That's a master plan on the Republican side. So it's like
Mhm.
every single one of those little battles of legislation is like turning into a full-blown war at the forefront, because it's like it's part of a broader narrative that's being pieced together by social media personalities, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But when you're just listening to NPR, New York Times, or Wall Street Journal, unless you're looking at opinion pieces, you don't have anybody kind of piecing together that narrative besides you. So it's like you end up a lot less emotional on the forefront of those conversations.
So how do you feel then your interactions go with your peers in terms of like, I mean, SSDP and stuff like that? How do you guys discuss politics? Like how would that interaction usually play out?
So those people are generally, the people within the SSDP community are generally left leaning,
Okay.
almost to an extreme,
Okay.
because the amount of information that you need to be part of the SSDP community is infringent on the war on drugs, right? So you need a vast history of like drugs in general, like Just Say No, the Nixon administration, like current curriculum, Narcan, needle exchanges, recovery alliances, prohibition movement. Like you need to know all those things. And all of those things are painted as like systemically oppressing minority communities, which they initially were, and to also suppress the Vietnam War movement.
Mhm.
So it's just like you're getting involved in a cause that you think is right, and you're hearing all this information continually that is supporting your organization for what you believe is the right reason, and kind of pushing you a lot closer to the left, right?
Okay.
So in terms of how we start all these conversations, it comes from a place of kind of like morally superior. It seems, I'd say a lot of them think they are.
Okay. Where would you put yourself on the political spectrum? Not even putting your opinions just completely out there, but where would you, from left to right, where would you kind of put yourself?
I took one of those like 200 question tests, and it said I'm completely independent, like 50-50.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, so do you think it's easier in that way to have a conversation with your peers, or is it more they want you to agree with them?
I think a lot of times when I'm having a conversation, I mostly try to listen. So regardless of the Republican or Democrat, it peer or not peer, it usually ends up in that I'm listening.
Hmm.
I mean, besides if I've been inebriated, obviously, that would be the exception. But in general, almost all the time talking to my peers, I feel like I'm the one taking a backseat and listening. And if they disagree with me, usually they end up kind of disagreeing with themselves. Just like if you let people kind of talk into a circle, that's how
Yeah, it's
conversation.
yeah, it gets tough. So if you're more of a listener then and just like to take in information, what made you kind of want to be part of like this civic engagement?
That is a good question. Well, a listener, in dialogue, because I think that's one of the most important parts. But in terms of, it's something I resonate with, and I see historically as a wrongdoing within the United States government. And personally, I've had experiences with drugs that have been largely beneficial to my life. So it's like I see this giant portrayal of wrongdoing, and I personally would like to affect it in the opposite direction, off of personal experience, and then on like historical, following historical evidence, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and like I stated earlier, you're an outlier when it comes to that for the most part. I saw a study from I believe it was the American National Election Studies that said that like 88% of young white males don't usually participate civically in, they don't participate in their duties, whether it be, joining a club like you did, or actively getting out there and spreading the word to vote and stuff like that. So what do you think separates you from that 88%?
I mean, you know that we just like lifelong friends. We grew up in a minority community.
Yeah.
So I think I share a lot of the values and, just like sympathies of that community. I mean, you know that we grew up poor in a minority community. So I think overall I might have seen that effect firsthand.
Okay.
And I trust that like this is the way out of a bad situation for a lot of people.
Okay. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So you said earlier that you ran the account for SSDP. Do you think it's fair for you to, or do you take some liberty in what you say on that account? Do you kind of speak your opinion or speak for SSDP?
I use the account almost entirely informationally, and
Okay.
everything that we post is vetted through a group chat of the board, the executive board, and
Okay.
the Chicago SSDP. So pretty much everybody has access to the accounts, the emails, the MailChimp, which is the newsletter stuff. But it's like I have the primary responsibility right now of actually getting the word out once it's like collectively agreed upon.
Okay. So do you think then, let's say you were given free reign over this account, right? Let's say you were the exec board. Would you
Yeah.
think it would be safe, or would it would be accepted for you to speak your complete political opinion on, let's say, Instagram or Twitter and stuff like that?
Hmm. That's interesting. Well, considering that I am president of SSDP, so
Yeah.
I do have that capability to do that, and I'm not doing that,
Yeah.
I would say no.
You would say no. Sorry, you cut out for a second.
Yeah, I would say no.
Okay, why do you think that is?
Because I view the war on drugs as a nonpartisan effort in a lot of ways, where it's actually debilitating towards the actual cause itself. Since most funding for a lot of other nonprofits is partisan. So it's like a Democrat initiative or a Republican initiative, right?
Hmm.
But SSDP is almost entirely grassroots funded.
Okay.
So that means that actual people themselves are funding it, not like George Soros or fucking, excuse my language, or like Trump or something like that.
Mhm.
So the biggest way to reach, the maximum audience, maximum target audience would be to label it as a nonpartisan effort, as a public health initiative instead.
Okay. All right. Well, then, based on you said that you collaborated with a lot of other groups
Yeah.
on campus to communicate. Um,
Yeah.
do you tend to agree with a lot of what they seem to post? I mean, apart from just informational, we're having this on Friday at 3 o'clock. Apart
Yeah.
from that, do you, with these organizations, do you agree with a lot of what you see from them?
That can be troubling at times because I think how a lot of organizations are trying to label themselves are almost as um, extremists,
Okay.
and that can be a little troubling because I don't think that is any type of way to really reach the demographic. So if anything, I have a problem with how they're portraying themselves because as a broader movement, it's bad for the cause.
Okay. So you think that they're just, so you said they're more extremists in their and the way
Yeah,
they go about things?
yeah, they are. Like, there's communists for DePaul, right?
Interesting.
So I don't really like those guys much.
Okay. So you, I mean, in terms of them, do you think they get out there and try to converse with, let's say, Republicans of DePaul, or I'm not sure what kind of organizations you guys have there, but or like libertarians of DePaul or something like that? Do you think those organizations, like left-leaning organizations or further right-wing organizations, do you think there's a lot of conversation going on there, or a lot of like, I mean,
They
because you're kind of in the middle ground. I mean, like SSDP, I guess, is more of a left-leaning group, like you said. But I
yeah,
think that you guys, like you said, focus more on policy and focus on public health more so than like like something. I feel like a lot of politics is this is evil, so I'm gonna try to like change it.
yeah.
Capitalism is destructive, or communism is evil, socialism. And you guys, I feel like, are more in the middle ground, being kind of like on the outside a little bit. Do you think there's a lot of discourse going on between these groups on campus?
I know that they do have debates, but the thing is that they've stabilized their communities.
Okay.
So it's a competition to win. It's not a chance to really collaborate, you know?
Okay, so would you say then they've kind of like built themselves an echo chamber where their ideas are safe because they all agree with each other, and that's kind of all that goes on?
Yeah, well, I mean, they have the opportunity because a lot of clubs at DePaul are kind of secondhand to most people's lives,
Mhm.
but within that community, there's very little actual support for meaningful dialogue. As much as it like as you said, it's like it's hatred. It's like your thing is evil.
Mhm.
Can you not see that? It's not. I'm trying to listen to you.
Yeah. Do you believe yourself to be in an echo chamber?
Not really. No, I think I talked to a pretty big variety of people.
Okay. I think that's fair to say. Knowing you as much as I have, I think you're more, like you said, you're more of a listener than anything. Unless something really bothers you. I think I'm more outspoken than you are in a lot of ways, but yeah, no,
Yeah,
I try myself not to be in an echo chamber. I feel like that's a lot of what I've come to learn. A lot of people that I know seem to just follow organizations or join clubs that just kind of exemplify their own beliefs, and it's just that's kind of it. And
I think
I feel like social media does that to the highest degree, where it's even more of a case because you're anonymous now. So you're just like, you're joining these message boards, whether it's like far right message alt right boards or like Twitter for like liberals. It's like you're joining an area where you feel the most safe, and you don't allow any other differing opinions in that kind of space.
I think it's really important to note though that for most people, politics is doesn't matter much. To
Really?
pretty much most people, it's just a way to like get involved with their community. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like almost like theater kids, it's like 99% of the theater kids in your school, it's like that was the only way that they could find friends.
Mhm.
They A lot of them aren't doing theater now, it's just like there's only so many people actually up on Broadway or doing this or doing that, and it's like they might like theater, but it's not like their lives. And it's like you
Yeah.
see the people who actually like want to make it their lives up on the stage, up in the political atmosphere doing these things. But to most people, I think politics is a different type of way to find a community of people, kind of like how I would join a kayaking club. It's like
Yeah.
we care about it a lot, so we think it's a big deal, but to a lot of people, it genuinely is kind of like a kayaking club. It's just a spare time thing. So I don't blame those people for being in echo chambers, because it's like what they mostly wanted was to just feel loved or understood or something.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that, where it's, at least the discussions that I've had in the classes that I've taken, or I was in student government my freshman year. A lot of the conversations that I've had with people of differing opinion, it's like, okay, their political opinions come from, I think, a place of not fear, but a place of, I want that kind of security. And I think that's I think it's good to have a political opinion, but to solely have it based on security is kind of like a dangerous thing, right? So the reason I say that is because especially on social media where I kind of get engaged more so politically, or at least I used to before I took these classes where I could actually face to face engage with people on these issues. It's people pick a side because they're scared, and then they villainize the opposite side. And on both ends of the spectrum. You know, I mean, you take extreme right wingers, and you're like, okay, take the alt right for example. It's like, okay, well, there's a white genocide going on, therefore anybody that disagrees with me is trying to kill off, you know, my kind. Or on the opposite side of the spectrum, you're looking at like Black Lives Matter, where it's like, if you don't support me, you're supporting the extermination of my race as well, in terms of the police doing this. So I see the extremes and why people would take sides, but I don't think that's safe for political discourse, and I don't think it gets us anywhere.
Well, I mean, I think that's also largely ignorance of how these things are funded, you know? So it's just like it won't stop because it is impactful on individuals. So it's like if I have a Democratic majority, like Georgia right now just passed some of like the strictest voting laws since like what the Democrats were saying were since Jim Crow, right? They
Interesting.
said they called it a contemporary Jim Crow law because it was going to disenfranchise like African American voters.
Okay.
The thing is that like I'm not sure how much of that is like Republicans are trying to play the political game. Like they want power. That is supposed to be their thing. So it's just like if that's how they're gaming the system. But like on the other side, it beheaves the Democrats largely to say that it's a racist move because they get a lot of like political pressure on their side. Like they get a
Right.
lot of political support. So I see the reason that it could be construed as one way or another, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But it's like the way that it's actually playing out is that it's ostracizing all these different people because for your side to get support, you have to say that the other side is doing something really wrong.
Do you think that, I mean, just particularly in the school that you go to, people are more open to differing ideas, or do you think they, for the most part, stick to their own? Because hold on, I'll have to pull up the study right now. But for the most part, we found that it was metropolitan areas. It was a study present. It was a study from the Freedom and Tolerance Survey. Major metropolitan areas such as New York, New Jersey, Long Island, Chicago, they weren't particularly supportive of free speech and civil liberties when it came to free speech. Do you think that's accurate in you know talking about the political discourse that goes on around you?
So that's something that I actually been thinking a lot about recently because in terms of sexuality, race, or religion,
Hmm.
it's complete for the most part complete tolerance except for intolerance, right? So that's the big thing that I see. So it's just like if there is anybody against like a Black Lives Matter movement, like those people are like uh in front of Horace's apartment, this guy didn't have a mask on, and people threw water on him from like their balcony. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. And like he was on his own block, but it's like the there is no way to not engage from one side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the way I kind of
And,
looked at it,
and
especially in our generation, was I think we're the most inclusive, but the least tolerant in terms of like we're the most inclusive when it comes to like, okay, you're this is the way you identify, 100%. Where I'm not going to question why you identify that way. It's just like that's 100% valid, regardless. But then it's
yeah,
like, oh, you have a different political view. I never want to see you again, and I hate your life, and I hate you. It's like it's you're villainizing people based on their ideas more so than their actions, and it's like,
yeah. And the thing is that, like I said, I don't think a lot of people have really had the chance to like follow through on their ideas or have a conversation that's meaningful because it's like we came up in an environment where it's like it's almost wolves. You don't have the opportunity to really challenge in a I don't want to say safe space, but in a space that's like you're actually going to have a meaningful conversation, you know? Because there's too many elementary ideas being thrown around in like a coliseum, you know, like you're
yeah.
dying to lose.
Do you think there'll be like an upward trend of more political discussion in terms of like college campuses and stuff like that, where people are more open to ideas? Or do you think it's become more of a like I said, do you think it's like the trend will continue of like completely separating both sides of the spectrum?
Yeah. I don't know. I think Trump personally was stoking a lot of hyper partisan tendencies that weren't really good for the country at all.
Yeah.
But I think largely because Biden's president, I stopped caring about that. But I know a lot of Trump people are still very, very angry.
Mm.
There's that Mark Maron bit. Do you know that comedian?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like, "You want to know how Trump got elected? What'd you do during the Obama years?" He's like, "You were fine. You were chilling. You were kicked
Yeah.
back, relaxed." But everybody who didn't like Obama was lining up at the polls a year early. You
That's
know.
true. That's true. That's true.
So I think that's the same thing with Biden right now. Like Biden's president, and I'm already like I should take a back seat. Like he's got it okay, but every Trump person is very, very mad about him. So I think there's gonna be another political upheaval, especially if Biden ends up, like dying in office.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, in my I'm taking a international terrorism class, and one of the things that we've seen is a tendency for or an uprising kind of alt-right terrorism or white terror or right-wing terrorism, right? So, and a lot of it stems from these political ideas of like a white genocide. And I think, I mean, in the past, like, what was it, like 5 years, it's gone up. Their terrorism acts have gone up so much. And I think there's a relationship or correlation between that and the Trump presidency. Not to say I'm not trying to be the one to say that Trump was a racist or anything like that. I mean, I don't know the man, so I can't tell you personally about that. But a lot of what he said, the alt right kind of took with and ran with it a lot to the extreme.
Yeah. Yeah. The rhetoric he used was largely, I would consider inflammatory.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think a lot of those people I mean, like anybody on the left, they got a lot of their or they harbored a lot on like forums and social media where they could build these echo chambers and spread their ideas and create these, organize and plan different things online and anonymously.
That's a very real danger of an online community too, because you feel so exempt from. I feel like you're like a local community, because like when you're talking to somebody on an online community, you're part of that online community because you have an immense amount of knowledge about the subject, probably, right? Or you feel
Yeah.
very strongly about a subject. So it's like, say, I feel very, very strongly about, say, underwater deep sea welding,
Yeah.
and then I'm having a conversation with you
Yeah.
about the implications of underwater deep sea welding. You're not going to know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
and you're part of my local community, but I'm not really getting the other side of that internet community because I'm not seeking it out. So
Yeah.
it's just like there is a counterbalance to the underwater deep sea welding implication argument, but I won't be able to get to see it because it's not in my local community. Like you would not be able to have that conversation. So it's just like ultimately people have the internet community, the local community, and the disparity between the level of knowledge ultimately enforces what they think about their internet community and continually isolates them.
Do you think that you actively go out of the way to try to find different things like that are opposing to your views?
I don't actively, but I don't think I try to be aware of things that reinforce my views, you know?
Wait, can you repeat that one more time?
I don't go out of my way to try things that will actively change my mind as much as I try to be cautious of things that are reinforcing my mind, you know?
Okay.
Because I don't think it would be a nice life to actively just be trying to go find things that you don't like all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important to make sure you don't get stuck and one thing becomes your entire identity, you know?
Yeah. I think I have trouble. I mean, I try to be like I like from my political perspective, like I like to be independent, but I think I have a lot of strong opinions, and I think I'm kind of myself have built myself like a small kind of echo chamber where like I try to not reinforce my own ideas, but try to like I guess I like playing devil's advocate a lot and being on a college campus. It's where students are mostly liberal. I kind of just am more trying to challenge their ideas more so than reinforce my own. I guess that's more of a thing which I need to I think I need to work on more, because I think it's dangerous to have, especially on a college campus where things are supposed to be, you're supposed to expose yourself to different things, that we have students that have a belief and the professor just kind of reinforce the same beliefs, and there's no real discussion. So I kind of try to be that. But that's also dangerous within itself, where it's like, okay, well, now I'm just being cognitively dissonant to their opinions because I just want to, prove them wrong or challenge them. It's like, I guess in a sense that I'm a bit of a hypocrite when it comes to telling people to get out there and get other political views. I don't know. That's something that I need to work on. And I think social media does that to me a lot on YouTube or Twitter, where I mainly follow people that are independent but mostly agree with me, where it's like I have enough I can't think of the word, but I have enough leeway to be like, yeah, but these aren't Republicans or Democrats. It's like, but they're definitely people who agree with me. Like, they're for the most part people who agree with me, whether it be on like watching streams online or just videos or following people on Twitter, Instagram, and stuff like that. So that's something that I feel I need to work on, which is one reason that I wanted to kind of do my interview on this subject. Because I wanted to get somebody, because I mean, from what I've known about you, like social media has never really been your thing. So I wanted to get like an outlier's perspective on this type of thing that's taking over our, I mean, 68% of Americans, that's a ton of people, that are getting their news straight from not news sites themselves, but people reading articles and then making opinions on those articles and then posting that. So it goes from the data to people making opinion pieces on that, to people taking opinion pieces or making opinion pieces of those opinion pieces and then sharing their opinions. And it's like, that's where I feel like a majority of people get their information from. And it's like, how at all are we moving forward when you're getting a third of a third party's opinion on a subject that you really don't know much about?
Yeah. No, I mean, personally, I deep dive a lot of times when I read articles as well, because I think if I'm passing time, that's how I'll do it. So it's like, even in like court documents or transcripts or whatever, whether it be like the George Floyd transcript where Derek Chauvin was on his neck. Like, I read the entire like 20-page document. Same thing as the women's soccer team with like their equal wage. So they were getting paid less than men, but like winning world championships, the American USA thing.
Yeah.
So I read the entire court document, and honestly, a lot of inequity laws, it seems to me, are that it's like trust laws on like a federal level, but specifically are unequal, right? So it's like women in general were making less. So it's like they basically kind of started a union within the women's soccer league.
Yeah.
But that union was in place during like before any of the current soccer team women got the ability to say. So it's like some people like 10 years ago made a contract for these new people who like were barely even around, Yeah. And now it's like, now they're stuck in a very inequitable thing. So it's just like, how do we fix that? You would have to change like trust unionizing laws, which would affect federally like contractors and like roads or plumbing or schools even, right? So it's like you'd have to change everything. And you see that in the NCAA right now too. That's happening as well. They'd have to change a bunch of antitrust laws for those players to be able to make monetary gain off their own image. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's something I really don't know much about because it doesn't really necessarily interest me, but I did see the difference between the male locker rooms and gyms in terms of the NCAA tournament, where it's like, dude, this is like, I get it, right? It's not no one, right?
Yeah.
Most people aren't gonna watch college basketball are gonna watch the women's NCAA tournament, So it's like, I get why the like supply and demand, right? But it's like come on, the almost disrespect that the women had to face. It's like, dude, I have better food in my like our dorms have better food than what they were served. It's like it's ridiculous. They're bringing something to the school, Yeah. And I think they were being treated like they weren't at all. Like their gyms had like 4 dumbbells and like a yoga mat. You know, it's like
Um,
these are almost professional athletes, and this is how they're being treated. And I kind of like I understand where the NCAA tournament is coming from in terms of why would they spend money on something that's not going to bring them nearly as much revenue, but it's still like come on, like
yeah,
it didn't have to be this bad, you know?
yeah. I mean, also, it's up to universities to be able to make the universal standard for what equity should look like as educated and like institutions. It's crazy. I mean, what was I about to say with the end of the? I forgot. It's whatever. But oh jeez, no, I had something. I so had something. Something about. Oh yeah, the almost all student athletes have strikingly low graduation rates, and like the amount of debt they incur is like they also can't get part-time jobs because it's so stringent on their schedule.
Right.
So student athletes notoriously don't graduate nearly as high as percentage rates of like regular students, and
Yeah.
also exit school with significantly more debt.
Damn, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then it's like they're not allowed to profit off their own name while they are within the actual organization.
Right.
So almost entirely overall, unless you go pro, it's a terrible deal. But I mean, barring scholarships. But here's the thing about scholarships as well for like, like women's leagues or like men's leagues, especially if they're like Division 2 or Division 3, is that like a lot of NCAA like will only allow them to like scholarship up to $6,000 per year
Hmm.
because it has something to do with like in it's like an affirmative action, but like for underprivileged kids. So it's like that $6,000 is the cap for whatever reason
Yeah.
between those two different categories. So you get very little money off school. You probably won't graduate, and you're gonna have more debt.
It's just a raw deal. Like
Yeah, it's
that's
just
just kind of
terrible.
tough. It's kind of tough.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that's like I said, that's something that I know next to nothing about. So I mean, I can't really add much to what you're saying, but it seems as though it's definitely a tough deal for a tough break for um these individuals. I mean, even like comparing the men and women, like at least the men in today's society like make an impact some in some way, shape, or form, right? Like they get to be on, like they're the title, you know, and then
yeah,
the women are have the same raw deal except they get less, which is tough. It's tough.
you gotta be. And if you count for injuries and that like life debilitating injuries, like if you're playing football, like concussions or stuff like that,
Right.
historically, they had to change the way the entire game was played. I mean, I actually do not know that much. It's talking like I know a lot about sports, but this is just stuff I've read like offhand. But like I said, I usually deep dive into those articles, so I still feel like I'm pretty informed about either the case law or situation around it.
So yeah, you're more just interested in different things. So you're not actively looking for differing or reinforcing articles or things like that. You're more so just interested in a lot. So you read a lot about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, I think enter myself in a variety of environments where you meet people from different communities.
Yeah.
Like that girl Heather, like her dad's police chief of Peoria. I talked with him for about 4 hours. My uncle Wally, he's pretty much, I think, on the bridge of neo-Nazism. And then my mom's like a conspiracy theorist, but my dad is like super liberal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then my brother is also super liberal. My aunt is almost kind of exactly similar to me. And whether it be the people at SSDP or other college peers, and then like you got people at work or open mics. If you play guitar or you do stand-up comedy, you got those people. And Chicago itself is such a diverse city. You can just be sitting on the bus. And so this one Uber driver the other day told me that he thought all white people wanted to enslave black people again,
Mm.
and that he was like waiting for the day because he bought a gun and he was going to be part of the revolution. It's like
Wait, was he white or was he black?
He was Indian actually. No,
Interesting.
he was gonna fight on the black people's side, and he was like, I'm gonna help him out.
I wonder where he gets his information from, man.
It was
'Cause I
that
mean,
was
white people think on the extreme side. They think the opposite. So it's like I said, it's like that's the danger of that we see when these echo chambers are built on these websites. It's like they have the same idea, but the opposite like execution of that idea, where they're like, okay, so we need to protect ourselves because we're gonna be enslaved on both ends. It's like where are they getting their information? Where is this pattern that they're seeing that's completely opposite? You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to me how that's like how
Yeah.
that's even like I mean it makes sense how and you could see patterns about it and so it's like you can see patterns but it's like I guess me being more center leaning or center right leaning a little bit I can't that doesn't make any sense to me like it.
Gotcha. Also, Dan, are there any last remarks? Because I actually gotta go soon.
No, actually, I think we kind of covered everything. I think it was a good discussion. I mean, initially I thought this was gonna be tough because we had agreed to do this interview, and then I thought you used social media more, so I was like, okay, this should be interesting, insight to the way social media affects someone's opinion. And that was the main thing that I was focusing on. So like
Yeah.
this is gonna be a surefire, easy thing to talk about. But then you're like, yeah, no, I almost don't use social media at all. So I was like, damn. So what can I find out here that goes against the entire thing that my podcast was supposed to be about? But I think I did find out a lot about the your peers and the way you discuss with them and how you view yourself in that regard. And I think it was a good conversation overall.
Dude, yeah, I guess you could like flip it to like the information gathering or like discourse around peers and stuff like that. But yeah, dude, I feel like this was very productive, man.
Yeah, and honestly, I think you did most of my job for me in terms of this interview. I mean, you explained a lot about, I would ask the questions, but you really did it. Like, you were really in depth on the way you would explain it. And yeah, no, thank you for joining me. I'll hopefully I get an A.
I appreciate it. All right,
All
I'll
right,
talk
I'll
to you
talk to
later.
you later, man. Have a good one.